Ever scroll through eBay and seen something listed as 4 parts only and thought, man, what a shame.
Yeah.
That's kind of where we're diving in today. Into the world of vintage electronics, where what's one person's trash is another one's treasure.
Right.
Specifically, we are taking a deep dive into the Swan SW140, a ham radio from the early 60s.
What's really captivating about this deep dive is how it kind of speaks to this yearning. I think a lot of us have to understand how things really work.
Yeah.
Especially in an age where so much tech just feels like a black box.
Totally. And our guide in this case is Pete Giuliano, a self-described vintage electronics enthusiast.
Yeah.
Who snagged this Swan SW140 off eBay, dust bunnies and all.
Wow.
And you're right, it was listed as 4 parts only.
Oh, no!
Imagine that. This piece of history almost ended up cannibalized.
It's a good thing Pete saw its potential, though. This particular model is extra cool because it's part of Swan Engineering's first trio of radios, the 140 alongside the 120 and 175. They're like the founding fathers of the Swan ham radio dynasty.
Okay, so history lesson aside, what does "for parts only" even mean in this context?
What's
Is it
that?
like busted beyond repair?
I mean, for most people, yeah, probably.
Yeah.
But for someone like Pete, it's a challenge, right?
Yeah.
It usually means that the device has a problem the seller couldn't or just didn't want to fix.
Right.
And in this case, the Swan SW140 had a very wonky carrier balance meter.
Wonky in what way?
Okay.
I have to admit, I'm picturing like googly eyes glued onto this meter.
Well, no, not quite that, but it is pretty technical. But stick with me because it is a great example of how these old radios worked. So to transmit clearly, your signal needs to be balanced. If it's off, your signal's going to sound messy, distorted. The carrier balance meter basically tells you if your signal's balanced correctly.
Got it.
And in Pete's case, the meter was way off, meaning the radio wasn't transmitting properly.
Oh, so it's like trying to sing in tune, but your voice is cracking all over the place?
Exactly. And like a good vocal coach, Pete starts by figuring out why things are off-key.
Yeah.
He dives into the circuitry and focuses on a component called the balance modulator tube. Now, this tube is crucial for keeping the signal balanced, and Pete thought it might be the culprit.
Okay.
He even whipped up a hand-drawn schematic to get a better understanding of the tube and the circuitry around it.
Wow, talk about dedication. That's like he's performing surgery on this radio.
Precisely. And during his investigation, he stumbles on this tiny, seemingly insignificant 100K resistor in the circuit.
Okay.
Turns out this little guy was the root of the whole problem.
Wait, are you serious? A single resistor, smaller than a grain of rice, was throwing off this entire radio.
Yep. It's a perfect illustration of how crucial every single component is in these vintage electronics. Replacing that one tiny resistor fixed the entire carrier balance issue.
It's funny how something so small can cause such a big headache.
Oh, yeah.
Reminds me of those Where's Waldo books.
Oh.
You could be staring right at the solution and not even realize it.
Absolutely. It's a good reminder that the obvious answer isn't always the right one, and sometimes the devil is in the details. But getting back to the Swan SW140, this resistor fix was just the tip of the iceberg.
Okay.
This radio is full of quirks and unique features that really set it apart.
Oh, you mean besides it being covered in dust when Pete found it?
Well, yeah, among other things. For example, remember how we talked about the importance of a balanced signal for clear transmission? Most modern radios have something called AGC, automatic gain control, to help with this, but not the Swan SW140.
Let me guess, it also skips leg day at the gym.
You could say that. It relies entirely on the user to adjust the signal strength manually.
Oh, wow.
Same story with the S-meter, the signal strength indicator that most ham radios have.
Yeah.
You won't find one on the Swan SW140.
So how do people even use this thing? Was it just a guessing game? Like, is my signal coming through? Hello, anyone?
Think of it like navigating with a paper map instead of GPS.
Okay.
You have to rely on your ears, your knowledge of radio waves, maybe a little intuition. It's just a much more hands-on, involved way of operating a ham radio.
Okay, I have to admit, part of me kind of loves that. You know, it's like the difference between driving an automatic and a stick shift. Yeah, automatic is easier.
Right.
But where's the fun in that?
Precisely. And then there's the volume knob.
Okay.
You'd think it adjusts the, volume, right.
Right.
Wrong. This knob actually controls the RF gain, which impacts the clarity of the incoming signal.
So instead of making it louder, it's like fine-tuning the radio waves themselves.
Exactly. And you know what else is super cool about the Swan SW140?
What's that?
Its tuning mechanism.
Don't tell me it involves rubbing 2 sticks together.
Not quite that primitive, but it is a testament to the ingenuity of these early radio designers. It uses a home-brewed butterfly capacitor, essentially cobbled together from two smaller variable capacitors linked together.
It's really amazing what they were able to achieve with the technology back then. It's like they were MacGyvering their way through all these design challenges, but it worked, didn't it?
It did, and not only did it work, but it worked remarkably well. Remember the VFO we talked about? The variable frequency oscillator? Well, the one in the Swan SW140 operates at a surprisingly high frequency, 12 megahertz, for a radio from that era.
Wow, that's wild. It's like finding out your grandpa's old record player could also play holograms.
Yeah.
You just wouldn't expect that level of sophistication. So after all that troubleshooting and digging into its quirks, did Pete actually get this thing to work? Drum roll, please. Did all that tinkering actually bring this vintage radio back from the dead?
You bet it did after a good cleaning, and that critical resistor swap, the Swan SW140, hummed right back to life.
Really?
Yeah, Pete even managed to hold a conversation on the 40-meter band. Wow.
Proof that this wasn't just a museum piece.
It's gotta be so rewarding hearing that first crackle of static after putting in all that work. It's like you've resurrected a piece of history.
It really is. It goes beyond just the technical achievement, though.
Yeah.
There's this real sense of connection,
Yeah.
not just to the radio itself, but to the people who designed it and built it and used it back in the day.
Right.
It's like tapping into this hidden network, this conversation that's been going on for decades.
You've sparked my curiosity now.
Yeah.
Knowing Pete, I bet this Swan SW140 wasn't his first vintage radio rodeo.
Oh, you are right on the money there. Turns out he has a bit of a Swan collection going on.
Ah.
You mentioned owning the 120 and the 175 as well.
He's like the Indiana Jones of vintage electronics,
Yeah.
always on the hunt for the next hidden treasure. And just like Indiana Jones, he ain't afraid to get his hands dirty. He even talked about potentially modifying his Swan 175, adapting it for 20-meter operation.
So taking these already amazing radios and giving them a whole new life, that's incredible.
It's really cool.
It makes you wonder what other vintage tech is out there just waiting for someone to dust it off and unlock its potential.
It's a fascinating thought, isn't it? In a world of planned obsolescence,
Yeah.
where gadgets are outdated almost as soon as you buy them, these vintage electronics offer a refreshing perspective. They remind us that things used to be built to last, to be repaired and cherished.
This deep dive has really shifted my perspective. It's made me want to go on a treasure hunt of my own, maybe see if my grandpa still has that old shortwave radio tucked away in the attic.
Maybe you'll be the star of our next deep dive.
There you go.
But in all seriousness, there's something undeniably cool about bringing these vintage electronics back to life.
Yeah.
It's a connection to the past, a testament to ingenuity, and a reminder that sometimes the most rewarding things in life are the ones that we rediscover.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And on that note, we'll sign off for today.
Yeah.
Until next time, keep those curiosity dials tuned.